This is a girls program guide for the U11 and U12 age group, specifically focused on the pre-ECNL programming. First, want to congratulate our class of 2022. These players have come from both our Premier, our Regional League, as well as our National League teams at the ECNL level. I'm really proud of these girls, and we're looking forward to see them do incredible things as they begin their collegiate season this coming fall. In addition to that, I want to also just give a shout out to our class of 2021 who just finished up their freshman year. Again, over 20 players committed to universities. Really proud of the girls. We've got kids at Division 1, 2, and 3, all having tremendous success. A lot of these players, really excited about them coming back to participate in our NC Fusion U23 USLW team this summer. A lot of that will begin in May, so feel free to bring your daughter out to come watch a lot of our players. The really great part about our U23 program is that 90% of our players that are participating in that team come from inside the club or have been a former Fusion player, and that includes some youth players that are currently playing that will be joining these groups. We have a tremendous amount of alumni currently from NC Fusion in college, a lot of them having great success. Here's a list of a few of them that have been a part of it. These are the current universities that we have represented over the last few years. If you've got a child that's a daughter and is looking at some of these institutions that's maybe a little bit older, and you'd want to kind of get a feel of, hey, what is that university truly like, and you want to set up a visit, please reach out to us. Chances are we can connect you with one of our players that's there, and more than likely they'll be happy to kind of give your daughter a tour and get a real feel of like what the campus is like or what it looks like. Every year we have players selected into the U.S. Youth National Team Talent Identification Training Centers. These are the past few invites that we've had. There was actually one this past week down in Charlotte. Our 2007s and 2008 age groups were a part of this. You could see those players listed on your right. In terms of the staff that we have connected to the scouting centers, Stephanie Workman, currently one of our goalkeeper coaches. She works directly as a youth national team scout. And then myself, I communicate on a monthly basis with Diane Drake, who's the head of scouting on the Eastern Seaboard. So she oversees everything from New York all the way down to Florida. And then the last two, Octavia Saunders and Bo Farrell, who are on our staff, they also are directly involved within our ODP program, which is another area in which players are talent identified. Typically, most of the kind of youth national team components start around the U14 age group. You don't really typically see it any earlier than that, unless you've got an incredibly special player who's playing up 3 or 4 age groups or stuff like that. But even still, they're more likely to be seen at that kind of U14 to U15 age groups. In terms of our player pathway, we have a full pathway from recreation all the way up to the pre-professional landscape, which is what our USLW is. So players that start at 4 or 5 can go all the way up and through college and come back and play and go on to be future pros. Although you might see a linear player pathway here, I can assure you, if someone's been around the game for 15 years now coaching, development is not linear. We've had players that are currently playing in college at Division One institutions that have been, on the gold team or on a pre-ECNL team, and then they've dropped down to a silver team, and then they've gone up to a regional league team or onto a national league team. And development is not linear. There's peaks and valleys. A lot of that has to do with how players mature, how they develop, how they change over time. There's some psychological changes. There's some physical changes that will take place. There's some social changes that will take place within a player. We've seen kids of all different kind of shapes, sizes, and maturity levels from a technical or physical standpoint go on to do incredibly good things. And it's not about where they kind of start. It's always kind of about how do they finish their youth career. In terms of the competition platform for U11, U12, we'll talk today mostly about the pre-ECNL East and West, but just to give you an overarching understanding of what it looks like across the age group, we do provide recreation at U11 and U12. You could typically choose either a fall or a spring. It doesn't have to be both. This goes along with the U11 and U12 challenge league that exist. Once you get into kind of the classic level programming, which is your gold, silver, bronze, those are year-round teams. So they'll play a fall season and a spring season. And then the pre-ECNL age group, which we'll talk about today, that is kind of a year-round programming. So we'll do a fall season. We'll play tons of games during that month of December and January. We do winter futsal, which is really fun. And then in the spring, we'll do kind of our spring calendar, again, competitive games throughout the year. In terms of some additional programming that we do offer, so a lot of our skills camps take place in the summer. In addition to summer programming, we have for those kind of top level kids what's called our Elite Summer Academy, in which both our USLW staff and a lot of our USLW players will work directly with those girls. A unique kind of component that most people may or may not know, the majority of our players play multiple sports. Player participation and player placement doesn't have any impact on participation in additional sports, and that includes 11s and 12s, that goes to 13s and 14s, or 15 to 19s, regardless of level. If you're an ECNL player, a Region League player, a Gold player, being able to play additional sports is something that we feel pretty strongly about. Our staff does a really good job at working to communicate with families and give them the best kind of situations possible and help them understand how we can avoid some training conflicts or some game conflicts and things like that. In terms of location, right now at this age, everything is still going to be location based in terms of geography, meaning where your geographic hub is. So if you're a person that lives in Greensboro or Kernersville, or you live in Winston-Salem, you're typically going to have options within that area. Our kind of full triad based programs, where you're kind of traveling all across all three locations, doesn't really happen until U13. So our Regional League and National League programs are the ones that have to travel going east, central, and west on a typical training night, whereas our pre-ECNL, our Classic, our Junior Academy, you're typically going to be settled within your geographic hub. In terms of what the pre-ECNL program looks like, they compete in the highest league in North Carolina, which is called the NCYSA. Very unique to our programming is that our teams will compete in the top boys divisions in the pre-ECNL level. The main reason we play in this league is to prepare the girls for the speed, the technical ability, and the physicality of play that is required at the ECNL level as they start to get towards that U13. So many of our girls absolutely love doing it. It's so fun to see their faces. This is obviously a great picture of one of our current players, and you can see kind of the determination on her face. In terms of what it looks like from a programming standpoint, typically you'll have 10 to 12 matches per season. You'll train 3 times per week. We do offer 1 goalkeeping session per week, as we have some players that at this age are starting to think, okay, maybe I want to be a goalkeeper. We typically go to 3 events in the fall and 3 events in the spring. Almost all the events are located within North Carolina. Typically, we'll send the girls to 1 out-of-state tournament per year, and that's typically either in South Carolina or Virginia. I believe this coming year is one in South Carolina. In terms of the training locations, the way in which we've kind of been able to keep a geographic hub for each pre-ECNL group is by doing a combined session in the central location. So what our girls will do is they'll train twice per week at the home location. So for the West, that home location is Truist. For the East, it's Bryant Park and Prolific Park. So typically they'll do 1 at each of those training areas. And then that third session that they have for the week will be a combined training session where both our pre-ECNL East and our pre-ECNL West will come together. One of the main reasons we do this is we do still have a pretty large geographic player base that's playing at the top level. In addition to that, we know that a lot of these players will go on to want to play within our ECNL Regional League or ECNL National League program. And one of the biggest challenges that we always see is that relationship side of things. For our girls, we know relationships is one of the most important and valuable things that they can do. I believe it's why they play the game at the youngest ages, is to have fun, to be part of a group. And then we naturally see kids really start to love and enjoy the game. But one of the challenges is that kind of discomfort at U13 when we have our East and West kind of come together. So this is a great way, and we do so kind of relationship building elements within this Kernerville session, the one in the central location. Those players will mix in and train together. What I've found, and probably more unique than anything else, is that the biggest relationship challenges are not necessarily with the players, but it's more about kind of the families when they come together. And parents. We know as adults it's probably a little bit more difficult to make friends. The older you get, I've certainly experienced those kinds of things. You know, you've got your set of friends and you don't really want to make new ones sometimes. But our girls, once they kind of get to know each other after that second or third session, all they're thinking is, oh my God, I just got 12 to 15 more friends outside of my team. And that's a really big, important factor for our girls. We want our girls to be confident and having a foundation and a community that's a part of doing what they're doing is incredibly valued. So that's one of the main reasons we do kind of a combined session in that central location. In terms of some of the benefits, obviously I talked about just a competition against the boys and being able to compete and play locally, but we do have some of the best staff in the area. Evan Bailey oversees all of our pre-ECNL development. He now also works within our ECNL program and is one of our college recruiting coordinators. Directly under him on the east side, overseeing all of the pre-ECNL on the east, is Daniel Martin, who we've just recently hired. There's a bio about Daniel at the end of this presentation if you'd like to take a look at it. And then Chip Eakes, who we hired last year to work within our pre-ECNL program on the west side. So those kind of the three main core staff, in addition to myself, who directly oversees all of our girls program at the ECNL level. Some additional things that we do that really the girls seem to enjoy. We do a lot of sports psychology stuff. We had a session last week about talking about breathing, which is a fascinating introduction to how to have players recover quicker, how to have players calm down as they're flustered within a game, or how to get them prepared to play in a match, to get kind of excited and ready to go. So it's a really fascinating presentation, and we typically do that once per month. We also do sports performance, typically on those Tuesdays, really mainly focusing at this age on things like balance, coordination, change direction, learning how to fall and get up and slide and all those different things that are required as they get older. Really more about kind of protecting the player as well as building the movement of the player so we can have them be a little bit more dynamic as they get older. And then the last two elements that we do is one is winter futsal, and then the other one is we film a lot of our matches. So we use VO cameras that we can bring out to the training facility where we can kind of show the girls on film exactly what we're doing at a training session. A lot of times we try and film some of the games and share to players and the families. For your families, you guys just get to watch it because you love your kids, and it's so awesome to have that film. I still have a little bit of film when I was 11 and 12, and I'm really thankful my mom and dad had those things. It's great to see. But also we use it as a big educational tool. I'll talk a little bit about futsal towards the end of the presentation as well. In terms of our expected events for this coming year, here's the list of the ones that we have. Our East and West teams will go to 4 of the same events, and then 2 of them will probably be different just on this coming season. These events are tended to change, but this is a general idea of kind of what we expect. We're just got to still go through all of our reciprocals and take a look at what other events that we think really fit this age group well. In terms of kind of details, obviously when you're going through your presentation, which I will share alongside, that allows you to kind of flip back and forth, I'm just going to give you some main highlights that are on this. Just again, highlighting that girls are going to compete against boys for the majority of the season. We do typically play them in the events. When we have events, we typically have them play against girls. But for most of our league play, it will be a bet against boys. Our rosters kind of are basically determined by where we think that level of drop off is within a team. So sometimes we'll have a group of 11, sometimes we'll have a group of 13, sometimes up to 15 if we feel that 15 players are at that level. Some additional things, players are guaranteed 40% of playing time within matches. Typically, most of the kids get 50 or above. Our coaches love getting every kid involved within the game. Some unique things as well is we do believe in players playing every single position. It's really more about having kids get an understanding of what's exactly happening, what are some of the challenges at each area, and we do a good job at really kind of honing in and helping players get a basic foundation of what the game looks like. In terms of the age group focuses, it's a 9v9 game, but we really try and prepare them to begin to get ready for that 11v11 focus. The main aspect of development right now is we believe in developing the individual player. We don't necessarily care about the wins and the losses. Obviously, everybody loves to win. It's exciting to lift a trophy or anything like that. But for us, our main focus is not on tactics. It's on individual player development, which is really focusing on ball mastery, that's receiving, change of directions, dribbling, ball striking, and then the ability to outplay your opponent in 1v1. So you're going to see a lot of our coaches really encouraging players to take players on, to change directions, to evade, really wanting them to become masters of the ball. And this really starts to help as they get older. When we see older players that really struggle with their feet, they tend not to enjoy the experience as they get older, and the game becomes significantly harder and much more frustrating if they're not comfortable with their feet. So our main focus at this age is really on exposing players to the individual technical ability and getting them to master those things so they can get more comfortable to be more well-rounded players as they get towards the older ages. The last part is, we always get questions about, players playing up or in middle school soccer or something like that. We don't necessarily recommend middle school soccer. However, we do have players that participate within it, and they can do that as long as it doesn't necessarily conflict with any events. You'll read the player promotion and players moving up and players moving down in terms of in the year. We typically don't move players down within the middle of the year. What we do encourage, if we see a player that's struggling, and a lot of the times this is directed by the family. So if a family comes to us and say, hey, listen, my daughter's really struggling right now, and we feel that it's due to the kind of the competitiveness level, what we'll try and do is get her some guest playing experience at a level that may be a little bit more appropriate, just to get some additional success. And what we've seen too is when we see players go and do that, sometimes they're able to kind of gain some confidence when they come back within our pre-ECNL group, on the next training session or the next day, the next game, we see them have a little bit more positive feeling towards themselves. But again, we really don't typically do this unless there's more of a conversation that's directed by the family, which the player is really, truly struggling. What we do a lot is bringing players up to train. If there's a player on a gold team that is thriving and they need opportunities, we'll bring them up. If there's a player within our pre-ECNL program that may need opportunities to play up at the ECNL level, we'll do those kinds of things. We're a big believer in developing each individual player within the team, and a lot of that has to do with rewarding kids that are having success. We always want them to have typically 80% of the time they're having a good experience where it's challenging. 20% of the time it's really challenging. Another 20%, which obviously that math didn't work out there. The other 20% is we want it to be easy for them. So kind of the mixture of those three things where we never want it to be so hard where they're not enjoying it, but we never want it to be so easy where it becomes monotonous or boring. For those that want to take a look at what our teams look like in terms of play and stuff like that, feel free to watch this video that I'll share just a little bit of it's a full game video of us playing against boys. For those players that maybe aren't selected to be a part of a pre-ECNL team, again, this doesn't necessarily prevent a player from having the experience that they want as they continue to get older, but those players will be placed within our classic level. I know Kylie Cirillo gave a presentation recently about the classic level soccer for this specific age group. These are located across 3 different geographic hubs. Here are the directors within each location. So on the west side, we've got Dominic Smith. Centrally, you've got Eduardo Aloa. And on the east side, you have Edwin De La Cruz, and those are their emails associated with. Here's just a brief overview for the classic level programming. They play in NCYSA leagues as well. These teams will compete against girls. Those teams are formed across multiple locations. So we got kind of Greensboro, Oak Ridge, High Point, Jamestown, Winston-Salem. We actually do have Danville, Virginia as one of our regions as well that we cover. During that kind of player registration, you can select, hey, where do I want my daughter to be placed if after the tryout, meaning what location, and then basically teams are formed either into a gold or a silver or bronze based off of that necessarily level of play. Here's a general overview of things that they're provided. So players will get 10 training sessions per month, which is basically a 2+1 program, meaning some weeks it's 2 training sessions, the next week it's 2 and plus an additional training session. They do offer 1 goalkeeping session per week, and then during the fall, it's typically 2 or 3 fall events in the fall, 2 or 3 events in the spring, typically trending more towards the 3 rather than the 2. It just depends upon each team and what they're kind of set up for. Typically, they'll play around 7 to 10 matches. I have listed down below all the geographic locations that exist. And then the one positive thing about all of our programming is we do believe in player promotion of players that are doing well. So any player that's really thriving on maybe a gold level, we'll give them opportunity to potentially play within our pre-ECNL. In terms of supplemental programs, as I discussed before, here is our kind of supplemental program for our pre-ECNL in the summer. It's 12 training sessions in total that are across June and July, typically on either a Monday or a Wednesday. You have a couple different options. We know that families travel across all different places throughout the summer. So if you maybe can't make all the sessions, you want to do 6, or you want to do 1, or you want to drop in, you're not quite sure we're going to make, here are the kind of price points. The main focus of it is about sport performance, ball mastery, and really helping players play in small-sided games. So 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, and 4v4 game formats. This is to maximize the number of touches that the players are experiencing within the environment. There's a link down in the right corner that you can click if you want to sign up for it. This is just a link that, if you want to watch a video of players that have gone all the way through our programming, feel free. They'll share their insights into kind of their experience of being an NC Fusion player. And then some additional programs for those maybe that are outside the club that are watching this. We have a platform that we use called Play Metrics. It's an all-in-one platform, which is mostly where you do all your player registration, where you get all your coaches' contacts, where you get all your resources from. It also is where your calendar is, your team communication. We do things like submit our starting lineups into it. We show sometimes the players the training session that's being involved in, and a lot of our player assessments are done through that specific app. Additional benefits that we have is we do use some of the best facilities literally in the country. So the 2 massive facilities that we have, one in the east, one in the west, Bryant Park in the east, Winston-Salem in the west, and then we do use 3 additional facilities. So Prolific Park and Kernersville YMCA are 2 of kind of the more hubs located between the east and the west. We'll do a lot of our indoor sessions at Prolific Park. In addition to, I'll show you here, we've got some partnerships that exist that a lot of our pre-ECNL players will use. So on the Winston-Salem side, we have Rise facility, which is located directly next to Truist Sports Park. And then on the east side, adjacent to the training fields at Prolific Park, is their indoor facility that we will use for a lot of our indoor programming. I talked earlier just about the game of futsal that we provide. So we actually believe in playing on the proper futsal environment, which is on a hard court, not necessarily on the grass turf in which you play indoor soccer. We've seen a massive boom over the last kind of few years across Europe on the growth of the professional game at the futsal level. And it's one of the best ways to develop the individual technical skills. So built into our programming next year, we're going to do a ton of futsal during the month of December and January as part of our winter programming. And that's across not only the 11s and 12 ages, but it's the 13s and 14s, as well as our 15 to 19s ECNL teams. So we're really excited to kind of get started on that programming as well. Some additional stuff that we have, I talked a little bit about our video programs that we use. We use 2 platforms. So on Spideo is our built-in cameras. We have 3 built-in cameras at the Truist Sports Park. So that's on fields 1, 2, and 3. So players are playing 9v9, let's say on fields 2 and 3. We'll get those games filmed just built in. And then at Bryant Park, we have fields 1, 2, 7, and 8. So the 2 9v9 fields are located on fields 7 and 8. And so we'll film those games. In addition to that, we have the portable cameras, as I was describing earlier, with the VO platform. A lot of times our coaches will bring that out to training and have the players film their session and then share it with them to kind of go over and show, hey, what we're looking at. In addition, when we do travel to some away matches, We try to typically get around 5 games filmed during the fall and 5 games filmed during the spring. It's not always possible. We do our best to kind of get close to those numbers. In terms of player development plans, we believe in kind of as much feedback as possible. Most of our feedback comes daily with the players on field, a little bit like informal kind of feedback. But we do provide monthly feedback in terms of the what went well, even better if player form that you may have seen already in probably the last few years. And then in addition to that, we do kind of a larger player assessment in which we go into the real big depth of every single technical action and tactical action necessary for players at this age group. This kind of falls in line typically towards the end of the player season. So when players are looking to do some goal setting, we really want to make sure that they're honing in on things that they need to be working on as opposed to just taking guesses as to what they're working on. We do provide a lot of community service at the triad-based level. Each of our coaches typically does at least one major kind of community service project within their team. We're also directly attached to the NC Fusion Foundation, so we have a lot of our girls, specifically our older girls, that do some volunteer work, whether it's working at an after-school program or whether it's being directly involved in some Saturday soccer that Sari Rose has typically provided. But it's a great, if you're not familiar with our NC Fusion Foundation, I would highly encourage you just to go in to look at some of the things that we do. We're always looking for people to come volunteer and be a part of our programming. In terms of our staff, you may not know all of the leadership staff that we have. So these are the ones that mainly oversee our club. Scott Wallison's our executive director. We do have some operations staff as well as a chief administrator and experience officer as well as a head of business. Those are located there. In terms of our girls leadership specifically, we have 6 full-time staff members, which is myself, Evan Bailey, Chip Eakes, Daniel Martin, Bo Farrell, and Anthony Suarez. And then we also have a number of part-time staff, including Stephanie Workman, who oversees our goalkeeping. But these are just a little bit of the roles in which people have in terms of their oversight of each different type of program. You may not know, but we have some support staff, so people that you might directly work with. I'll look at us. The main 2 that you may hear from the most would typically be Stephanie Walker, who does all of our team travel. So when you guys go to an event, we typically do hotel blocks all the way through Stephanie. She does an excellent job at really finding the perfect price point, finding things like a free breakfast for people. And we do this across all of our teams. So we typically are able to negotiate an amazing rate for all of our families when we do travel, whether that be for an event or whether that be just for a league game, maybe in Wilmington or stuff like that. But typically, there's not significant travel at the pre-ECNL level, with the exception of the maybe 1 or 2 events. So typically, you won't have more than 1 or 2 overnight stays throughout the entire year, and that's typically for a tournament. The other person you may hear from is in terms of Gary Gartner. He does all of our tournament selections as well as a lot of our community relations projects. So you may get an email from Gary kind of letting you know about, hey, Dick's Sporting Goods is doing some type of sale. So if you want to get some gear and stuff like that, we have a number of strategic partnerships throughout the Triad area that can help benefit our players. This is our full slate of coaches for the pre-ECNL level, and the two in the bottom left are the ones you'd probably want to focus on. So Daniel Martin overseeing our U10 Junior Academy East, as well as our 2 pre-ECNL East programs at 11 and 12, and then Chip Eakes in the West, who oversees the Junior Academy West Red, as well as the U11 and U12 pre-ECNL West. If you want to learn a little bit more about Daniel, feel free to take a look at this presentation. If you want to learn a bit more about me, happy to watch this video. You can probably learn a few little tidbits about myself in terms of what my interests are or how I really kind of got into coaching and all this. I feel really thankful to be a part of a great club that allows us to work with some amazing families and some cool kids. If you have any kind of additional questions, here's some of the main people that you'd be working with depending upon your geographic hub within our pre-ECNL program. In addition to that, I'm not going to cover it today in the video, but in the presentation, if you go to the next slide, you can get a good understanding of what kind of takes place at U13, 14. So it's a pretty big overview of all the different types of things that we're able to offer as players get older and stuff like that. Okay, really appreciate everybody taking the time to watch this video, and we look forward to seeing you in the coming weeks. Take care.